Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of On Oshkosh. I'm your host, Cheryl Hens. Very pleased to be joined tonight by three folks from a really super important group in our community. For those of you who aren't aware of it, there is a group called ESTHER. ESTHER is an acronym, and we're going to find out what that acronym is. But basically, it's an ecumenical group in the Fox Valley. They do a lot of really super good, important work, much needed work. So we're going to chat with three folks tonight from there. To my right is Katie Olson. Katie is the executive director of ESTHER-Fox Valley. Seated next to her is Miracle Wheeler. You are the community organizer. And then Jennifer Verderami. I said it correctly, all right. And you are the housing advocate. So I suspect we're going to be chatting a lot with you. Because one of the things we're going to touch on tonight is affordable housing. So welcome to all of you for being here. Appreciate it very, very much. So tell us what the acronym ESTHER stands for, and just a little bit about how you got your start and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'll take that one. ESTHER stands for Empowerment, Solidarity, Truth, Hope, Equity, Reform. And we got our start 20 years ago, started a few interfaith meetings of mainly clergy at that time, if I remember correctly. That was before my time here, so just remember from stories. And then in November of 2004, there was an actual convening of these clergy members and like-minded folks who cared about social justice, and we officially went for our EIN tax exempt number, and we have existed ever since. We are one of, I believe, 12 affiliates across the state that make up the Wisdom Network, and we all fight for social justice. And the Wisdom Network is actually part of the national network Gamaliel. And I like to point that out because when President Obama did his organizing, that was through an affiliate of Gamaliel. So that's our claim to fame, if you will.
And so it's part of, what's that word?
Gamaliel.
Gamaliel, okay.
Yeah, Gamaliel, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Well, I'm going to look that up. So part of the Wisdom Network, which is part of Gamaliel.
Yes.
But you have your own separate tax-exempt number. You are a full-scale 501c3 organization?
Well, the Wisdom Network has affiliate 501c3s under it, so we have our own number under the Wisdom umbrella.
Okay, got it. But if people make a donation to you, it's fully tax deductible?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. So you've got a lot of, and throughout the show, we're going to be putting up their website address. For those of you listening to us on the radio, I will tell you that the website address is ESTHER, ESTHER, and then there's a hyphen, foxvalley.org. So again, it's ESTHER-foxvalley.org. And I'll try to remember to say that throughout the show for those of you listening on radio. So the overall mission, I mean, ESTHER, Empowerment, Solidarity, Truth, Hope, Equity, and Reform. That's a lot of stuff that you're working on, and it's super important. Every bit of it is important. What's the overall mission? We hear about social justice a lot.
Yes.
And I think social justice, what it means to one person, might not mean the same thing to another. What is the social justice definition for what you folks do? Who wants to field that one?
Anybody want to take it? No? Okay.
All right.
Well, I'm going to kind of answer this in two parts, because at the beginning I kind of thought you were going somewhere else, is just like, what is our mission? And so, like, our mission is to develop leaders in social justice, and we do that through community organizing. But that what is social justice question, that I feel like we're kind of re-looking at every day. But an answer that I would give is kind of whenever you see something on the news or in the neighborhood that just doesn't feel right, that is a social injustice, and we want to right that. We want social justice to prevail.
Okay, got it. So when you say your mission is to develop leaders, leaders who do what? Go out and then try to right these wrongs? Or how do you go about that? How do you identify potential leaders, and how do you go about, training them, if you will, to do this kind of work?
Yeah, those are great questions. And our philosophy is everyone is a leader. It's just whether or not they want to lead publicly, or if they want to use their leadership skills. And they are skills, so they need to be worked on, but everybody has the capability to be a leader. And so where do we find leaders? Everywhere. Whoever wants to, especially if somebody has been impacted by a social injustice, we want them to know that they have the power to use their voice. And so how do we train them? How do we what do we send them out to do? It kind of varies, because there's the typical organizing path, which, if somebody has not been directly impacted and wants to learn organizing, like, okay, we'll kind of give you the textbook. This is how you do it. Here's some skills to practice. Where if somebody's been directly impacted by something like being unhoused, a lot of times if you're unhoused, you're also impacted by other social injustices if you are a woman or if you are a person of color, or, yada, yada. So we really want to be trauma informed and kind of let them guide us for what the training should look like and how long it should take. Like Jennifer here started as, she is a housing advocate, but she started as just coming to our housing advocate meetings and kind of just hearing what we have to say, and then getting trained. So would you mind speaking about how your process of how you got to where you are?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So my process, so I am directly impacted, a couple of social justice issues. The first was being housing. I am also justice impacted. And through being involved with Esther and being trained and using my lived experience and being taught and trained how to use my voice and my lived experience to try and impact not only other people to learn how to use their voice, but to try and implement and bring about systemic change. I am now also the co-facilitator of our Transformational Justice Task Force.
Transformational Justice?
Justice Task Force. As I said, I have lived experience with being unsheltered, with being incarcerated, related to my substance use disorder, which I have long-term recovery from now. I have also,
congratulations.
Thank you, experienced challenges with mental health issues. So I've navigated a lot of barriers, some self-imposed, but mostly systemic in terms of lack of funding, stigma, shame, just barriers related to past decisions that, even though are long in the past, for instance, how I got involved with the housing advocacy, I have a friend who ended up being kind of a mentor who does organizing work and was working with ESTHER. Upon release from my incarceration, spoke with her about some of the challenges I was facing, and she introduced me to Bill Van Loeck, who at the time was the head of the housing task force, and we spoke, and he ended up bringing me on board, and Esther hired me as a housing advocate. I did quite a bit of training under Wisdom. Esther sent me to a 3-day long training in organizing. Katie and Bill did a lot of training with me. It was a 6-month long process, and then I was offered a contract. A lot of support. I'm pretty tenacious and resourceful, so I had faced a lot of these barriers on my own, but not everybody has the resources or support that I did. So it's very important for me to help others learn to navigate that and try to remove some of those barriers, because it's really hard to navigate any of those other issues like substance use or mental health or finding a housing, if you have even, and I don't have any evictions, but say you have an eviction on your record, or any of those other things that make it, or you don't have the income to qualify, or whatever, you have a prior bankruptcy that prevents you from finding housing, how are you supposed to navigate your mental health, or re-entering society after being incarcerated, or managing your substance use disorder, or navigating successfully your probation rules when you don't have a place to lay your head at night?
Right.
You know, it's almost impossible, right? So it's kind of like, it's almost like you're set up to fail. And then if you do want treatment, fortunately that wasn't my situation, but I work with plenty of other peers who do, and the lack of funding, it's not there. Or someone is lucky enough to get funding and they get into a treatment facility and then they get into sober living, and when it's time to transition out, there's nowhere for them to go. So then again, how do they successfully navigate everything?
Right.
So it's just kind of been a process. And I really appreciate that. And one of the things that Esther does, and does very, very well, is they created a safe space for people with lived experience. And I say this, and I feel very supported in this at Esther, and that is that people with lived experience who want to do this kind of work, I say it all the time, and it's not my statement, I've heard it said before from other impacted people, and that is that our experience is our expertise. And Esther fully supports that, and they listen. And there have been some things that I've pushed back on within some of the task forces about some trauma-informed things and different ways of doing things, and it's been respected at the top. I'm now also on the board of directors. So just having my voice be listened to and given the opportunity to lead and to make systems change and learn how to go out and do it in society in a bigger manner, to make changes for all of my community. So that's kind of been my journey.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. So Miracle, you're a community organizer. Certainly we want to find out what that is. But how did you become involved with Esther, and how long have you been with them?
So I came to my first Esther event as a community member, helping to bring directly impacted people and people of the community to the event. And I came and I listened and I liked what I heard. And as somebody who also is directly impacted and someone on the spectrum, it's not always easy for me to speak up and use my voice. But in that meeting, there were like breakout groups where we share with our group, and like I got so much encouragement from sharing within those groups that when it was time to share out as a group, like they basically like chanted me on to share my idea. And when I spoke to the whole group, just like the empowerment and the encouragement and the welcoming, like Jennifer said, directly impacted people are heard and embraced, and it felt good. And I was like, I want to do more of this. Like, I like this feeling. How do I do more? And I talked to Katie, and she's like, you can come to this and you can do this. So then it started going from there. And I've always wanted to help make change in the community, and I always wanted to do this and do that. And Esther is just like a big umbrella of everything I ever wanted to do in one spot. So I'm like, this is a one-stop shop. So I got in. I was also a housing advocate, as I experienced housing situations as well. Mine was more from having a child born with half a heart and one lung, and trying to navigate, do I pay for this for him? Do I pay this rent? Do I pay for this food? So like trying to navigate and do the best I can. And the more I shared my story, the more the Esther group were asking, what could we do to help prevent this in the future? And it just grew and grew and grew. And then I was asked to be on the board, which was awesome. And they let me share my ideas and share my experience and share things like, if you want this population that I am from, this is how we feel comfortable. And it went from there. And then the job was opened up as a community organizer especially in the BIPOC community. And I'm like, hey, those are my people. I know how to speak to them. I know their needs. I know how to draw them, how to make them feel welcome. And it just went from there. And people in the community are now seeing like the importance of organizing, especially including that BIPOC and directly impacted communities. So
Sure. A couple of things. The community that you've mentioned a couple of times, are you saying BIPOC?
BIPOC, like Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Okay, all right. I've not heard that. I'll call it an acronym for lack of a better word. I've not heard that before. And you said you're also on the spectrum. That's the autism spectrum. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think you do a marvelous job in speaking. You know, I know you said it's sometimes hard for you, but I think you were you not at or part of the forum held back in March at Beckett's for
Yeah, I was.
candidates who were
Yes.
running for city council?
Yes.
And you too, Jennifer, right? You both told your story. Your child died, correct?
yes.
Yes, I'm very, very sorry for your loss.
Thank
And
you.
know, that was all kind of tied in with a lack of housing, you know. And I don't think that people really understand the significance and the impact that a lack of housing can make on your life. I think a lot of us take it for granted. You know, myself at times, you know, we go home, it's just a given that we're going home. But if you don't have a home to go to, and people can so easily fall into that situation, especially nowadays with things costing so much more. You know, housing prices are out of control, and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it puts more people into that group, into that community of people who have housing issues. So, so how, you know, back to Esther as an organization, it's ESTHER-Fox Valley. What's the geographic area that you all serve?
Basically, from Oshkosh north to roughly Kaukauna, because Wisdom has another affiliate, Joshua, from Green Bay. So we kind of meet in
Okay.
Kaukauna, but there's, you know, sometimes overlap. But
Okay. All right. Yeah, when I think of Kaukauna, I don't think necessarily of that being part of the Fox Valley, but someone earlier this week talked to me in terms of that they lived in the North Valley and it was Kaukauna. And I never thought of that as going quite that far north, but I guess it does. Okay, and you don't go further south than Oshkosh?
occasionally we'll go to Fond du Lac, but it just gets a little hard for us to manage if it's beyond
Sure,
that. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, Esther as a whole is broken down into several different groups, several different task forces, and you know, I'm assuming that you have found leaders in the community to lead each of those different task forces. The biggest one is, and we're going to come right back to you, Jennifer, the biggest one, I think, they're all important, they're all big, but the one that I think impacts the most people right now is finding affordable housing. It's just such a huge challenge right now. And do you, in your work with Esther, have you seen any even small movements in a positive direction?
No,
Okay,
no,
that's an honest question, and I appreciate that.
no. Geez, this is so frustrating. It really is.
Well, let me just share one thing with you that is positive, and I think Oshkosh is trying to get something else going where there is going to be more affordable housing being pushed for in the city, but we currently have a small area just outside of downtown. It's on Jefferson Street. I don't know how familiar you ladies are with Oshkosh, but it's not too far from here where we're taping. And that is a small pocket of multifamily homes that are being built and marketed specifically for people with low to moderate income. So that's a step in the right direction, but it's such a baby step,
Right.
It's barely a movement. It's the right movement, but it doesn't begin to scratch the surface.
No, exactly. And it's not just the lack of affordable housing. Where are you going to develop it, right? It's zoning issues, it's building issues, it's developers buying up properties, it's B&Bs, it's the not in my backyard mentality when you want to put affordable housing in other neighborhoods. It's property owners not being able to transition to a different living situation because the housing market is so expensive right now. So people are stuck living where they're living and they can't transition out to open up more houses for other people to move into. And then you talk about affordable housing even in terms of rentals for people. There's no such thing as affordable housing. I forget the exact statistics, but the last time that we looked at them, it takes working almost 60 hours a week, two people of a two-income household to be able to afford a one bedroom apartment in Oshkosh. Like, that's impossible. And we at the candidate forum, for instance, and we hear it all the time when we do one-on-ones with people. There are people literally, as Miracle referred to, there are people literally choosing: do I eat or pay the rent? Do I get my medication? Do I pay the rent? And that's the struggle people are living with day to day. But then there's also this false narrative out there that people that are unsheltered are there because they choose to be there, because they don't want services that are offered to them. They are lazy, they don't want to work, or they did something to deserve being on the street. So the reality is, while there is a very small portion of the population that, for whatever reason, prefers to remain unhoused, and that's a very small portion, the majority, I forget what the exact statistic is, but it's well over 80%, are there because of choices, circumstances out of their control. It's not that people don't want services. There is a lack of services. There is a lack of funding to provide services. There are month-long wait lists. It's not that people aren't doing good work or aren't providing good services. There's just not enough.
Right.
There's just not enough. And then let's also look at the fact, with everything being as expensive as it is, the face of homelessness, and I hate that word, but the face of homelessness is changing. It is no longer that stereotypical, stigmatized, it's that drunk over in the alleyway, it's that person using drugs over there, it's that crazy person talking to themselves. It's not. I don't know many people who have the substantial savings today in their bank account. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck. People are one car accident, one major illness, one sick child, one closed daycare, and God forbid, one rent increase away from losing their homes.
And
That's the reality.
the fastest growing population of unhoused people is the elderly.
Yep.
They, for Social Security, it doesn't cut it, so they don't pay their mortgage or their rent, and they get evicted, and they are out on the street.
Right. And then they have an additional barrier to finding somewhere else because they have an eviction on their record.
Well, at that forum back in March, I was, I have to watch my mouth here because how I felt about that, I can't really say in the words that I'd like to use. But I was shocked, dismayed, and even angered by some of the responses that these candidates for elected office on our Oshkosh City Council were saying. One said, well, have you approached churches? Like, churches are, hello, you guys are an ecumenical organization. Yes, you're not a church per se, but you are made up of and started with groups of churches or clergy members. So, hello, that's the first thing. Clearly, he didn't understand the group who sponsored him to be there. But secondly, it's when did it become the church's responsibility? I know that as a church, churches are supposed to, we as Christians, Jewish folks, whatever religion we are supposed to help our fellow man or woman, whatever. And yet we are just one person. I as a person can only do so much. You as individuals can only do so much. Churches no longer have the kind of income that they once had to be able to help. I know at my own church Sunday, I was sitting waiting for someone that I was meeting, and there was a woman sitting next to me who was homeless. I know you don't like that word, and I want to delve into that for a moment, but she was unhoused and living in her car. She had a job interview the next day, but she did not have gas to get there. So our church gave her, I think it was a $20 or $25 gift card for gas. It was a gas card, actually. And, hopefully on Monday she got the job and can move out of that situation that she's currently in. But churches can only do so much. So when that candidate said, well, have you approached churches? What a ridiculous answer. And then another one, and I just kind of laughed to myself about his comment. He said, well, what are you hearing from folks? Hello, what does he think you are all doing there?
Yes.
What are you hearing from folks? You don't even have to be running for office. Do you watch the news? Do you read the news? Do you listen to the radio? Are you on social media? If you are, then you know what people are saying. It's that housing is too expensive. Period. End of story.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
That you're pointing out a very significant issue, and that is there is a major disconnect between what is happening in real time, in real life on the street, and people that are in office sometimes. Mm-hmm. Not everybody, because we have some fantastic, particularly in Oshkosh. And on the city council right now, we have some amazing city council members.
Well, that gentleman actually got elected.
Well, I'm speaking about the two Chris's that currently sit.
Okay. Yes.
I'm speaking about the two Chris's.
Yeah.
But we do have some pretty good officials here in Oshkosh. But that's the problem, that there is a major disconnect, and I can't speak for them, and I don't know them well enough to say, but I have had some interactions with some people, and I'm not sure if it's, in some instances, it's just an absolute lack of empathy. Mm-hmm. It's a bias, it's stigma, it's shaming, it's some instances just don't care, not my problem. You figure it out, you're the nonprofit. Not our job, but it is your job. You collect our taxes.
It's everyone's job.
Correct.
And that's one group or elected body can solve this problem. Right. You talk about something taking a village. This is taking 1,000 villages to help solve this problem.
Absolutely.
And I think I've said this to a few different elected officials, and I'm going to continue to work on them because I want to see something in this vein happen. I believe that developers, and I've been told that this is probably legal to do. Probably legal. Don't know for certain. But what I would like to see happen is these developers, when they approach a community to get approval to develop these multi-family units, these big apartment complexes that we're seeing in Oshkosh and elsewhere, that when you approach them, the city or village, whatever it is, will give you the permission to do that, but I feel that they should have to reserve a certain percentage of their units strictly for people who are of low to moderate income, whether that's $50,000 or less. I know the median income in Oshkosh is somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000 a year. I would say the majority of the people who fall into that category are probably on the low end of that. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I would like to see, and especially if they are asking for tax incremental financing to build their project. You know, a certain percentage, I don't care whether you're asking for TIF money or not, but a certain percentage of your units should, I believe, have to be reserved for people who meet those low to moderate income requirements. You know, that's one place to start. And, you know, but there again, it takes communities to say, you have to do this. It takes developers who have a heart instead of just hands out grabbing people's money and doing a land grab to make more money. So it takes them to say, okay, we understand there's a problem. We are going to do this. And they need to understand that just because someone has low income, it does not make them criminals. It does not make them drug addicts or, you know, alcoholics. It's just the way it is, and it's becoming more so. Go ahead.
Can I also say it takes
Yes.
people listening? Because you have us who have gone through these things that are telling you how it is, what we need, and that is another reason why I'm like, I have to use my voice. I have to speak out, because like, we're telling you what we need. Don't brush us aside or translate it into what you want it to be to make it look pretty. Well, the truth is it's not pretty. We're telling you what we need. We're telling you how you can best support. That's why I am not opposed to people asking questions, because the more educated you are, the more you can help me and those in my situation. So ask questions, get to know us, like, personally. We'll talk. We'll let you know what we need and how to be supported, but it all starts with listening, not shoving your ideas or your assumptions. Listen. That's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. You are so correct. So it does take every single person, every single governmental agency and developers and communities as a whole to work on solving this problem. And, you know, I'm happy to hear that Kamala Harris wants to make, you know, affordable housing one of her issues that she works on. But here again, it takes everybody. You know, these elected officials don't operate in a vacuum or in a silo. And so they can only do so much. If they can't get the rest of the people who are in elected office to vote their way, nothing's going to get done. And their ideals and desires are going to fall by the wayside. We've got to stop the partisan politics. You know, Democrats saying, you know, you Republicans, we don't want to hear anything you have to say, blah, 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 and vice versa. The Republicans saying the same about Democrats. We have to work together as people. That's what this country is. It's people. And, you know, maybe we need to do away with the two-party system. Maybe that's a good place to start.
Yes.
But people have to work together to solve anything. I don't care what it is. And what I've been talking about for a while too is here in Oshkosh we've got this I don't know the official name of it, but it's a little village of tiny homes out off Jackson, I believe. And you know, that's for transitional housing for folks, but let's find other parcels of land in the community, and instead of allowing all these big gargantuan apartment complexes going up, let's build more tiny homes or find developers and give them tax credits, some kind of tax incentives to build more tiny homes that people can afford, you know, and then maybe they can at some point move from that into something different. But at least we're giving them a roof over their head, you know, to start.
And I feel like it's time to talk
ready.
about, because you were talking about, you know, it takes the community coming together. We are actually right now trying to pull the community together to help us secure a grant, which is very, very competitive. But our letter of intent was accepted by the state. If our application is accepted by the state's continuum of care, it can go on to the federal level. But I just before I came here put out a poll of when can we meet, Tuesday or Wednesday, ranging from county officials, city officials, us obviously, COTS, Mountains of Hope, Pillars, Solutions, Christine Ann, Advocap, and some churches, and how can we come together, because this pool of money will be community money. We'd like to purchase a building that would offer permanent supportive housing. So
In what community?
this would be in
Oshkosh.
Oshkosh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are two places that are currently for sale that if we have plan A, plan B, if we get the money and that doesn't work, we'll figure out plan C, but we have ideas and a lot of people at the table. So we're hoping that this will be a good step in the right direction. Again, this isn't going to fix the problem. This is only going to give us, 30 units? Am I totally making that number up? Sorry. But
About
still,
30.
Yeah, so it will.
Well, that's a start.
It's
Yes.
It's a pilot model.
Yes. So about 30 units. And how much is the grant that you're seeking?
Up to 10 million. So
wow.
we'll see
Okay.
if, and because it would be permanent supportive housing, it would have 24/7 care provided on the premises for anybody with open CPS cases, with in recovery or active addiction, mental health.
So you're working on solving multiple problems within one grant, within one development.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful. And I'm not going to ask you where, because I don't think you probably want to share that just yet. But it's nice to know that you've identified not one but two buildings so that you have a backup,
Yeah.
if something happens.
And I do have to give props to Lou Shear at the county. She is the person who found Lou Shear. She's, do anybody remember her? We refer to her as the housing czar, but I don't remember what her actual title is, but she's with
I've spoken to her
Windermere.
before. I've interviewed her for an article that I wrote. She was with someplace in Fond du Lac, wasn't she?
She was with Advocap for many years, but now
Yes.
she's with Winnebago County.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So yeah, she has helped encourage us to write the letter of intent and look at properties, and the county is unwilling to take on the grant, but has said that different departments can help. So Lou
Why
will
were they
be-
unwilling to take on the grant? I mean, they're leaders, and they should be willing to be a role model.
That is a very good question, and I feel the same way.
So they didn't give you an answer as to why they wouldn't take on the project.
I think maybe that should be directed to them.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, but it would benefit everybody within Oshkosh. It would benefit people in Winnebago County, and it would get at helping with more than just a housing issue.
Right.
So that's good. And this grant, is it just a one-time grant, or would it be an ongoing kind of thing?
As it is listed now, it's a one-time grant.
Okay. But $10 million can go a
Yeah,
long way.
and a lot of times grants like these will be specifically for a building or for staff or for XYZ, where this one is pretty wide open that it can help us get building and staff and
Quality staff.
correct quality staff. Like we'll be able to pay competitive wages.
Okay. And if you were to find another property, could you use some of that money for another property as well, or is it just going to be earmarked for one of these two places that you've already identified?
That is a question that I don't know the answer to at this point. Have either of you
I
had a
don't know
chance to
either.
dig? Because literally we just heard about this the week before last and had to submit the letter of intent last week and found out today that it was accepted.
Well,
and September 13th,
congratulations.
the application is
That
due. Thank
fantastic
you.
news.
Thank you.
So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and say prayers that continues along a positive path for you
Thank
guys,
you.
Yeah.
which ultimately helps everyone.
Yes.
You know, it ultimately helps us all. We could spend the remaining 19 or 20 minutes on just housing alone, but you guys do so many other things that I want to touch on a few of the other task forces that you guys have. One is a transformational justice task force. So what does that do?
So, well, as the co-facilitator of that task force, I guess I'll take that question. So we work on issues surrounding what used to be called prison reform. So now it's renamed transformational justice. And we work on issues surrounding conditions in prison, bills that affect people who are still incarcerated, people post-release. One of the bills that we have been supporting in particular is the revision to the Good Samaritan law. One of our task force members, Bev Kelly Miller, is a fierce advocate of that and has an organization called the Megan Kelly Foundation. Bev's daughter died of a fentanyl overdose. And the person that was with her did not call 911 because he was on probation and was afraid he was going to be revoked and go back to prison. And her daughter died as a result. Also, had her daughter survived, she would have been charged with internal possession and would have revoked as well. So she probably wouldn't have called had the situation been reversed. And what the revision to the law is to protect people that are on probation or supervision from being revoked for calling for life-saving services if they're with someone who is using or if they're around drugs and someone overdoses to prevent that death. And that bill did not go anywhere this year. They tabled it. And so that is one thing that we are pushing for to go through this year. We have another program called Court Watch.
Court Watch?
Court Watch.
Okay.
And two of our members go into Allegheny County Court and they observe bail hearings and they collect data related to who gets bail or who gets bond, at what amounts it's set based on the crime, the race, sex, previous income, whatever, anything that might stand out as odd. And whether they're married, single, all the stats, right? Anything that might stand out as maybe bias, and collect the data on that. I'm trying to think. We have a film coming up on, actually on October 8th, we have a panel coming up that's going to be at the Unitarian Church, and we're showing
In Appleton?
in Appleton. Oh, Fox, I'm sorry.
Fox Valley Technical College.
Oh,
We
that's
just
I
had
keep
an
I yeah.
event at the
Sorry,
Unitarian.
that's
Okay.
right.
Yes,
It's we just had something at the UU. Sorry.
So at the
yeah,
Technical
it's at
College.
Fox Valley Tech. Yep.
Okay.
And it's a short series of films by Brave New World about mass incarceration in this country, and it's looking at issues of poverty and things that drive mass incarceration. And on the panel, we have 3 impacted people. Dante Cottingham, who is with the Remington Center UW Medicine Law School. We have Shannon Ross, who is the founder and director of the community. We have Mark Rice, who is Transformational Justice at Wisdom. And then we have someone from Secretary Hoy's office coming. Secretary Hoy is out of town on business, but he is sending a member of his leadership team to speak on the panel. And then is it Richie?
Matt
Matt Ritchie, who is a UW professor, will be on the panel as well.
Okay. And that's coming up on October 8th? Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
people can go to the website, to the Esther website, ESTHER-FoxValley.org, and check that out to see exactly where that is. And you'll see a whole list of other things there, other events coming up meetings that are coming up and so forth. Just real quickly, because I want to touch on some of these other things too, but I would imagine that this Court Watch group, I would imagine that they are seeing some inequities in how bond hearings are conducted, who gets bond, who doesn't, how much the bond is set at, and so forth. Am I right in that assumption?
Yes.
And so how do they work then to try to right those wrongs?
That we are still in the stages of collecting our data.
Okay.
So once we have the data collected and input, they are collaborating and modeling themselves after the Court Watch program in Maryland.
Okay.
And they are working with a couple of organizations in collecting data, and then we will come up with our action plan to address those issues.
Okay. So this Court Watch thing kind of initiated in Maryland then?
Yes, Court Watch has a very large Court Watch program.
Okay.
Maryland has a very large Court Watch
All right.
program.
Excellent. All right. We have a mental health task force. What do you guys do there?
Well, excuse me, our mental health task force has had a rough couple of years because about a year and a half ago, our co-chair of the mental health task force actually died by suicide. And so we did a lot of internal healing, and we have hosted Ebb and Flow Connections Cooperative to have them come in and do what they call community living rooms. And we last year teamed up with First Congregational United Church of Christ in Appleton. They had a mental health task force. And so right now we are in the process of doing a few things: continuing community living rooms, going through the process of becoming a what's called WISE organization as the congregation becomes a WISE congregation. And that's an acronym, and I apologize, I cannot remember what it stands for, but basically a safe space for people with mental
Mental health challenges.
Mental health challenges.
Thank you. A challenge to say that.
Yeah.
Mental health challenges and or like, sorry, my brain is, but like
That's okay.
autism type of disabilities.
Yeah.
Yes, if there's
Well,
people
I think that, the mental health thing is just, again, it's kind of like affordable housing. It's so big that it's difficult to get your arms around it.
Yes.
Because it's so huge, and then it's impacted by all these other things,
Yes.
which makes it seem even larger.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for the loss of that individual who headed that up.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. And
I don't even know what to say about that. It's,
we're
it's like these commercials that you see where people in the military conduct these things on gun safety and mental health and so forth, and then they turn right around the next day or the next week and they commit suicide. It's awful, and it almost makes you wonder if the work that they're doing, and I'm not saying this is fact, but it does make you wonder if the work that they're doing is so overwhelming on their heart and their soul and their mind that it just becomes too emotional for them.
yeah.
And so that's another thing. But you do have something in conjunction with NAMI, National Association of Mental Illness. Thank you. It was right there, and I couldn't quite get it out. But that's a walk that is coming up on Saturday, October 5th.
Yes,
right?
so that is, NAMI has this annual walk, and we have a team, and we're reaching out both in our Esther community and the First Congregational community, asking people to join our team called Faith, Hope, and Love.
Faith, Hope, and Love.
Yes.
Okay. And how many people are you hoping to get?
We're hoping to get 1 to 2 dozen, which I know is kind of a big
Okay.
window, but we'll be happy with 1 dozen, but we'd be happier with 2 dozen.
Sure.
Or more.
And is this a money-raising event, or is it strictly an awareness event, or is it both?
It is both.
Okay.
So all proceeds go directly to NAMI,
Okay.
and raising awareness of mental health challenges.
Okay. All right. Immigration Task Force.
Yes.
What does that do?
Our immigration task force, kind of an evergreen project, is trying to get driver's licenses for all, especially since Minnesota just, what was that, last year or earlier this year? Time kind of runs together, but
It sure does.
relatively recently, Minnesota passed driver's licenses for all, and I know that our state looks a lot different than Minnesota, but also they're very close. So let's see if we can use that as momentum to get our Senate and Assembly to.
So when we say, are we talking legal immigrants or illegal immigrants or both?
Well, one thing is we don't call anybody illegal because it is a documentation status. So if they are undocumented, that's what we refer to them as. But yes, that undocumented immigrants could legally drive if they pass a driver's test and pay their fees. And
I can see people railing against that.
And they do.
Because whether you call them undocumented, whether you call them illegal, I don't have to tell you, there is a population within this country that says, if you are not here on a documented or legal status, and I'm using that word very intentionally because that's a lot of where it comes from. I mean, if you're not documented, then you're not legal in the eyes of many people in this country and in terms of the law. So it's a cyclical thing. There's no way around it. But I can just see people saying, if they're not here, if they're not documented, then why should they be allowed a driver's license? And who's going to pay the cost for all this? And, so what is your response to that then when people raise concerns like that?
My response, and help if you catch me missing anything, but expense that would be on the person. So just like if you or I need to get our license renewed or go get one, it is on us or our family or whoever we can support. So this would not be a free service. And as far as their documentation not giving them citizen status or green card or whatever, that doesn't affect whether or not they can drive safely. So if they do take the test and pass it and pay the fees, I don't see how that should matter.
Okay.
And also just bottom line is these people are driving anyway, and I'd prefer them to be licensed and trained. Can they earn their driver's license? Can they understand the signage even if they don't speak the language? Like, I personally think it's just a kindness. Let's let them have this right if they earn it. But also a public safety thing of I would feel much better if people, and I know
we've got people out there who have been born in this country and they've lived here for generations, and yesterday I had almost 2 accidents that if I had not been paying attention, 2 different people would have hit me, and you can tell they've been driving for years and probably been driving like crap for years. So and they're documented, as you call it. They're citizens of the United States. So I don't even want to get started on people driving. It's just, especially in roundabouts, it's insanity.
Yes.
Okay, down to just a few minutes. Environmental Justice Task Force. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Right now we're working on what we call in organizing world cutting an issue, which is what thing in the community needs to be addressed that we can fix. And we know that it is around the health of our water, because Lake Winnebago is not in a good condition. So we are talking to experts about what could be changed and what we can do in the community to organize around that.
Well, and it's a very challenging issue because, there's been a lot of green stuff, green algae type stuff in that water for a very long time, and it even gets into Menominee Park.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to the parks director about that, and I kind of get a roundabout issue. I didn't talk to the parks director per se. I did talk to someone underneath him, and this guy sort of was talking in circles, saying, well, we can't address it this year. We have to, talk to these people. I think he was talking about at maybe, I don't know, some higher level. We got to talk to them for next year. Well, next year comes, but you don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it looks awful.
It does.
You drive through Menominee Park, and the water there just looks awful. So it's not a good thing. So I think our Parks Department needs to get on that and talk to whoever about getting that problem fixed, and work with you guys perhaps on that. Real quickly, Equity and Racial Justice Committee. So it's not a task force, but it's a committee.
Right.
It's a group of concerned citizens dedicated to equity for gender, race, sexual orientation, etc. So what kinds of things do they do?
Since it is a committee and not a task force, it's a lot of internal discussions and healing and growing, but
I am the co-chair of that committee, and a lot of educating. Right now we're working on getting an event going to kickstart our book study of the book Poverty by America.
Poverty by America?
by Matthew Desmond.
Okay. All right. So when you say a book study, is that going to be like, a group of people get together, they all read the book, you read like a couple chapters and then discuss it? And
Yes.
Okay. When is that kicking off?
It kicks off October 1st, and it will be Tuesday of every month in October. And
Okay.
then for the last Tuesday, we're going to show a video to sum it all up. And
Okay.
the event.
And I'm sorry, who's the book by? Matthew who?
Desmond.
Okay. All right, very good.
He is the same author of Evicted that was released several years ago. And
Okay. And then to wrap this all up, you guys have a very special event coming up this year. You're turning 20 years old.
Yes.
And you're having a big celebration on Saturday, November 16th at 5 o'clock p.m. at Waverly Beach Banquet Hall in Menasha.
Yes.
Waverly Beach is a great place.
Yes.
It's just a wonderful place, so it's a good place to have it. Anything special happening at that event, besides the event itself,
Yeah.
which is special?
The event itself, and we have a keynote speaker named Keith Finley. He created the Innocence Project, and we're working on some fun aspects too, some music and or dancing. That's to be determined. But one thing that I wanted to, I didn't catch it at the moment, but has been sitting with me, is you referred to us as ecumenical. Typically, ecumenical refers to only Christian denominations. I want to clear up that we are interfaith of any and all
Okay.
sects
All right.
and
Thank
denominations.
you for that.
You're welcome.
So you're ecumenical, but other things too.
Yes, yes.
Interfaith. And, that's the other thing. I would imagine that you don't have to be of any faith in order to work with you folks.
Correct.
Correct.
And
So-
that I'm an example of that. I am not affiliated with any religion, and I am welcome here.
All right.
Same.
All right. Well, we are out of time, but thank you guys very much for spending the last hour with us, talking to us about all the things you do. My mind is blown right now. I feel very overwhelmed just thinking about everything that you guys do. And
And I
can't
just
applaud
realized we
you
didn't
enough.
talk about our public transportation task force, which we won't now, but just know
Yeah.
that that happens too.
Yeah, just go to the website and you can see everything. And if there's something that strikes your fancy, by all means, reach out to them and let them know that you'd like to serve on a task force or a committee or whatever. So, but thank you.
Thank
for
you
what
very
you do,
much.
and for everyone else with Esther, who does so much work that's very, very needed. So thanks again to my guests. Thank you to my crew. And, of course, thanks to all of you for listening and watching. you're the reason that we do this. So we will see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.